Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking into something really fundamental, the interplay between your ego and your soul.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff how these two aspects influence, well, pretty much everything, your choices, your sense of fulfillment.
And understanding this difference, we think, can really help you gain deeper self-awareness and maybe find a more meaningful way to live.
Exactly. We've looked at some really insightful material on this, and our goal today is basically to break it down into something practical for you.
Okay, let's dive in then. When we say ego, what are we really talking about? What's the core idea?
So, based on our sources, the ego is fundamentally our sense of self-importance.
Mm.
It's that part of us that's really invested in getting validation from the outside.
Ah, okay. So seeking status, recognition, that sort of thing.
Precisely. It drives us to, assert ourselves, protect our image, and sometimes that comes out as pride, or on the flip side, as fear, like fear of looking bad.
Right. It's like that inner critic or maybe cheerleader that's always focused on how we appear to others. So how does the soul fit into this? How's it different?
Well, the soul is seen as our deeper, more authentic self. It's connected to what we truly value, our real passions, the core of who we are, underneath all the external stuff.
So it's less about the outside world and more internal.
Exactly. While the ego is looking outward, constantly scanning for approval, the soul looks inward. It seeks fulfillment, purpose, a sense of harmony that comes from within.
Okay, so ego, external validation, image, soul, internal fulfillment, being true to yourself. That's a helpful contrast.
It really is. And this fundamental difference shapes so much.
Yeah.
Our mission here really is to help you figure out which voice might be louder in your own life.
And maybe how to tune into that soul voice a bit more, for, more peace and authenticity.
That's the idea, to help you foster a more soul-driven life.
All right, let's make this concrete. How does the ego typically manifest in daily life? What does it look like?
Well, one really common way is needing constant approval. You might notice yourself always looking for reassurance, or maybe making choices based on what you think others will praise.
Yeah, basing decisions on pleasing others, even if it doesn't feel quite right deep down. I think we can all relate to that.
It's very common. The ego's hunger for validation can easily drown out your own inner compass.
Definitely. We've all probably done things to impress someone, right? What's
Yeah.
another sign the ego might be running the show?
Another big one is the fear of failure, because the ego is so wrapped up in maintaining that positive self-image.
Ah, so it avoids risks.
Exactly. It avoids anything where there's a chance of looking bad, failing, or facing negative judgment. That fear can really hold you back from trying new things, from growing.
It's like a little voice saying, don't try that, you might mess up. It can be quite paralyzing.
It really can. It limits opportunities, keeps you playing small.
Hmm. And how does this ego thing affect how we interact with people? Competition, maybe?
Absolutely. The ego often fuels competitive behavior. The focus shifts to being better than others, rather than just improving yourself.
Right, comparing constantly.
Yeah, and that creates unnecessary stress, friction in relationships. It often comes from this idea that there's not enough success to go around. If they win, I lose. A classic ego trap.
That scarcity mindset. Okay, that paints a clear picture of the ego in action. Now let's flip it. What does it look like when the soul is more in the driver's seat?
When your soul is guiding you, there's a shift. You start seeking experiences that feel meaningful, intrinsically valuable, and you look for genuine connections with people.
So decisions come more from your inner values, your passions, rather than what society expects or what looks good on paper.
Precisely. Like choosing a career path that truly lights you up, even if it's unconventional, over a prestigious job that leaves you cold.
The fulfillment comes from the activity itself, the purpose behind it, not just the external applause.
Exactly. And another hallmark is genuine compassion and empathy. Extending kindness not because you expect something back or want to look good.
But because you actually care.
Yes, from an authentic desire to help and connect. It feels very different.
Yeah, ego-driven interactions can feel a bit transactional sometimes, can't they? Like you said, keeping score.
That's a good way to put it. Soul-driven actions tend to foster deeper, more authentic relationships. They're built on mutual respect, real understanding.
Which contrasts with those maybe more superficial or even manipulative interactions the ego might favor.
Right, where the focus is more on what's in it for me.
This is really interesting. But how do we actually tell which voice is dominant in our own heads at any given moment? It can be subtle sometimes.
It definitely can be. A key practice is honest self-reflection. Really asking yourself, why am I doing this? Is it for approval,
Right.
recognition, or because it aligns with my core values? my passions.
So stepping back and observing your own motivations without judging them too quickly.
Exactly. It takes curiosity. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it's crucial for gaining that clarity.
Are there any practical tools for this kind of introspection?
Oh, definitely. Things like journaling can be really helpful, or meditation, even just carving out some quiet time for contemplation.
Making space to actually hear yourself think?
Yes, these practices create a space where you can observe your thoughts and feelings, notice the patterns, and start to identify that underlying motivation. Is this ego or is this soul speaking?
That makes sense. Quieting the noise lets the quieter voice emerge. What about how we handle criticism or setbacks? Can that give us clues?
Absolutely. That's a great indicator. If you take criticism really personally, like it's a direct attack on your worth, that's often the ego feeling threatened.
Whereas a soul-driven perspective might see it differently.
Right. Someone more soul-aligned might see criticism as feedback, potentially useful information, an opportunity to learn and grow, even if it stings a bit initially.
And failure, too. The ego might see failure as devastating.
Yeah, like a final judgment on your abilities. It can lead to shame, feeling inadequate. But from a soul perspective, failure is more like a detour, a lesson learned, a chance to adjust course.
Okay. And even celebrating success, how does that look different?
Well, if your first instinct is to broadcast it, seek applause, maybe boast a little, that's often the ego needing that external pat on the head,
Versus,
versus feeling a deep, quiet sense of satisfaction, gratitude, fulfillment from within, without necessarily needing everyone else to notice or validate it.
so it really boils down to spotting those patterns in our reactions, our motivations, and asking why.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's say you recognize, maybe my ego's been a bit too loud lately. What then? How do you start shifting towards a more soul-centered approach?
Well, it's about intentionally cultivating practices that nourish the soul. Mindfulness is a big one. Just being present in the moment helps reduce reactivity to those ego urges.
Standing out of your head a bit.
Exactly. And actively engaging in things you're passionate about, things that allow creative expression that reconnects you to your deeper self. Spending time in nature, too, can be incredibly powerful for quieting the ego's chatter.
Yeah, nature has a way of putting things in perspective. These all sound like ways to turn attention inward, away from that external focus the ego loves. What else?
Cultivating gratitude is huge. Consciously focusing on what you appreciate shifts your focus from what the ego thinks is lacking to the abundance you already have. It fosters internal contentment.
Instead of always chasing the next thing.
Right. And setting healthy boundaries is key. Learning to say no to things that drain you or don't align with your values protects your energy for what truly matters to your soul.
Protecting that space for your soul to thrive, that feels really important.
It is. And underlying all this is consistent self-awareness. Regular self-reflection acts like a compass, keeping you connected to your soul's guidance, keeping you grounded and authentic.
So if we put in this work, if we manage to align more with our soul, what are the payoffs? What benefits might we actually experience?
Oh, the benefits can be really profound. Often people report a much greater sense of inner peace, genuine fulfillment. Life starts to feel more authentic because you're living in line with who you really are.
More meaningful, more purpose-driven, perhaps.
Definitely. Because your actions are rooted in your core values, not just external pressures.
That sounds way more sustainable than constantly chasing ego-driven goals. What about relationships?
They tend to deepen significantly. When you operate from your soul, you connect with others more genuinely. You're more present, more compassionate.
Less focused on what you can get from them.
Exactly. Which fosters stronger, more supportive connections built on authenticity, not ego needs. It moves beyond just roles and expectations.
And what about just, the stress and anxiety of everyday life?
Living with more soul alignment generally leads to reduced stress and anxiety. You're not constantly striving to maintain an image or meet external expectations.
Because your focus is internal.
Right, on what truly matters to you. This creates more inner peace, more contentment, and it also tends to build resilience. You handle challenges better, adapt to change more easily when you're grounded in your authentic self.
So it's not about getting rid of the ego entirely, is it? It seems like it has a role.
That's a really important point. The ego isn't the enemy. It's part of our psychological makeup. The goal isn't elimination, it's balance.
Making sure the ego doesn't overpower the soul's wisdom.
Precisely. Allowing the soul's guidance to come through. leading to a life lived with more intention and authenticity.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. So, for someone listening now, feeling like maybe their ego has been a bit too dominant, what are some really practical, actionable first steps they could take, like today?
Okay, first step.
Uh-huh.
Consciously make time, even just a little, for activities that genuinely nourish your soul, whatever that looks like for you.
Could be creative stuff, nature, mindfulness.
Exactly. Writing, music, walking in the park, meditating for 5 minutes, just intentionally choosing something that feeds that inner part of you.
Simple but easy to neglect. Okay, what's number two?
Second, take a look at the company you keep. Try to consciously surround yourself with supportive, uplifting people. People who encourage your growth and authenticity.
Yeah, positive relationships really do reinforce that soul connection, don't they? They don't feed the ego's drama as much.
They really don't. They act more like anchors. Okay, thirdly, commit to continuous personal growth. Stay curious.
Keep learning, exploring.
Yes. Learning new things, seeking out new experiences, it keeps the soul vibrant and engaged. It prevents stagnation.
Maintaining that sense of wonder. Love that. And what's a final key practice?
And finally, and this is crucial, practice self-compassion.
Hmm.
Be kind to yourself, especially when you stumble or face setbacks.
Talk to yourself like you'd talk to a good friend.
Pretty much. Accept your imperfections. Embrace your unique journey. This kindness fosters a healthy inner environment where your soul can feel safe and heard.
That's a powerful reminder. We can be so hard on ourselves, which is often the ego talking, isn't it?
Very often. So really, to wrap up our deep dive here, understanding this dynamic, the dance between ego and soul, it's just vital for a fulfilling, authentic life.
Recognizing those ego patterns, actively nurturing the soul's voice, it leads to more harmony, more purpose.
It really does. And remember, it's about finding that balance where the ego serves its purpose but doesn't overshadow the soul. That allows for intentional, authentic living.
It's an ongoing journey, not a destination you just arrive at.
Exactly. Embracing your soul's guidance is a continuous path of self-discovery. And maybe a final thought for you to consider. As you cultivate this mindfulness, this connection to your inner self, you might find you can navigate life's challenges not just with strength, but with a kind of inherent grace and wisdom.